So, Russian athletes in Formula 1. Russian drivers could soon return to Formula 1. That's the reports that have been circulating in the last few days or so. Obviously, there are a lot of controversies around this, to say the very least, but there are peace talks ongoing, and I imagine that is probably the reason why. Peace talks, of course, between Russia and Ukraine, the US heavily involved in that as well. That's a whole controversy in itself. I'm not going to get into that during this video. Let's just focus on Formula 1. Let's just talk about racing here, because as we know, Russian drivers could compete in FIA events, but they had to do so under a neutral flag, and they also have to do so after signing a waiver basically denouncing the Russian involvement in Ukraine, something that some people have done and some people have not, and it's a controversial issue. People always say keep politics out of sport, but how can you when sport can be so political, such a important and driving force behind a lot of things, even in the political sphere? Well, let's have a look what's been said here, guys. Full article on the F1Chronicle.com, and I'll give some of my thoughts at the end of the video, as always. Russian drivers could soon be able to race in FIA-sanctioned championships such as Formula 1 without restrictions. In the last days of 2024, successful Dakar rally competitor Sergei Karakan, who has refused to sign the famous FIA document distancing himself from Russia, said he had hope on the horizon. "I managed to talk to the Sheikh, who is the president of the FIA," he told TASS news agency, referring to Mohammed Ben Sulayem. He promised that next year he will correct the situation with the admission of Russian racers to competitions. He has now told the Russian language service Sport Express that the president sat down with Mr. Yarin, I'm not going to try and say that person's name, Minister of Foreign Economic Relations, in just the last few days. "Yesterday was a very important meeting for me personally and for all of motorsport," said Karakan. The FIA president assured that he would soon issue an order allowing Russian racers to participate in competitions without signing documents condemning the actions of our government, he revealed. "This could be a significant step forward if it does not encounter serious resistance within the FIA system," he said. Russian competitors have been subject to an FIA restriction and conditions since the outbreak of the crisis in Ukraine 3 years ago. It's a relatively short announcement there for you guys. I mean, it's a tricky one, because obviously, where do you draw the line between Russian athletes and the Russian state? Let's take Nikita Mazepin for an example here. His father, who was born in Belarus, but heavily a part of the Russian regime with Vladimir Putin, he was sponsored by Uralkali, who is, I believe his father is the president of that company, and that is a very big Russian company. So it's like, where do you separate the state and these competitors? It's a very blurry line, and it always is, but particularly in a state that is as authoritarian, shall we say, as Russia. I think that's a polite way of putting it. So I understand totally why the FIA did what they did. For me, I don't think, I mean, you guys know my feeling. This is all conflict, at the end of the day. I've spoke about it at length before, and I don't think we should be allowing Russian athletes back into Formula 1 unless the conflict ends. And it might well end soon. There are peace talks ongoing. Putin has been talking to Trump. Zelensky has been kind of forced out of those whole talks, which is a whole controversy in itself, and I'm not going to get into. But at the end of the day, if the conflict ends in whatever kind of form it takes, I think that personally, Russian athletes should probably be allowed in. I'm not so sure about Russian companies. I feel that's a bit much. Russian sponsorship and Russian race, I feel that's probably a bit too much, to be honest. But what I would say is I think athletes should be allowed to compete without doing that waiver, if there is peace. If there is not peace, then I think that waiver will probably stay, and I think it should stay, to be honest. That is my opinion on the whole matter, but at the end of the day, there's no correct solution here. It's such a controversial issue, and everybody has their own opinions at the end of the day. But that's just mine. I feel like most of these athletes, most of these drivers, they're not too associated with the regime to the point where they can't actually compete. But I do feel like Russian sponsorship is something that should stay gone in Formula 1 for now. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, obviously, with the Ukraine conflict over there as well. And hopefully there is peace, and hopefully it's a lasting peace as well. That's the main thing. But what do you guys think? Do you think Russian athletes should be allowed to compete in Formula 1? And one last thing, one last caveat I forgot to mention. Before all this kicked off as well, you may remember that Nikita Mazepin had to compete under a neutral flag in 2021. He didn't be a Russian driver. And that's because of the ban on Russia to a lot of sporting competitions, including football, because of the Olympics doping controversy in 2014 when they, of course, hosted it. Of course, where the Russian Grand Prix was held as well. So maybe there'll still be restrictions from that, but I don't know how long that ban was for. I don't know what that kind of does for it, but I imagine that Russian athletes may well be allowed to compete in motorsports soon, but they might have to do so under a neutral flag because of the Olympics ban, not because of the conflict in Ukraine, because of the Olympics ban. But anyway, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Like, share, comment, subscribe as always if you want to see more content like this here on the F1Chronicle.com. Have a great day. Have a great week. Like, share, comment, subscribe as always, and we'll see you very soon, guys. Have a great day.